we'll get back to that as we turn our attention to the 49er game this week. Can you believe it, Drapes? You look at the numbers, and Big Throw Brock is taking on Dink and Dunk Mahomes this week. Can you believe that? With more on that, nice enough to join us as he's kind enough to every week. NBC Sports Bay Area 49er insider and pre- and post-game host, Rod Brooks. How are you, Rod?
I'm doing fine, but you know what, man? You nailed it, because that's exactly what both quarterbacks are doing right now. I mean, Mahomes is, limited for reasons I'm sure we'll get into, but he's still Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we're not saying anything crazy. And Brock Purdy, with the exception of last week, he's slinging that thing. His depth of target against the Rams was over 11 yards. It was 14.7 against New England. It was close to 10 yards against Arizona. His depth of target last week against Seattle was a little bit over 7, because they started running the ball. The Niners did, like they should have been doing against Arizona and against the Rams. So, the thing with Brock is, hey, man, whatever they need him to do, he can do it.
Rod Brooks joining us. Rod, before we turn our attention to this matchup, was that win over Seattle impressive, or was it like I said, that the Seahawks are the West Coast version of the New England Patriots?
Can it be both things? Because Seattle's not good. They're not good defensively. And that was, the thing I kept harping on last week, is that you had a chance to get an Arizona team that was not good defensively, specifically and basically exclusively against the run, and the Niners squandered that opportunity. They didn't squander that opportunity against the bad Seattle run defense, and they took advantage of it. But when you look at Seattle, beyond run stopping, they're not good in pass coverage. They don't really get after the quarterback. And they were injured too. Losing, not having Tariq Woolen for that game, I don't think it would have meant Seattle won, but they're losing a big guy, on the back end of their defense and big in their pass coverage. Seattle offensively, they're kind of caught in between. They don't know if they should run the ball or if they should let Geno throw it around as they have. DK Metcalf is a very, very good wide receiver, but if he's not getting the ball, all of a sudden he becomes a problem. And they don't have a good offensive line, Seattle. So they're not good on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. But for the Niners, that was a game that they needed to win, that they had to win. For them to go up and play the way they did, and at times, look good and almost look good in a dominating fashion, I just think both parts of your statement can be basically equally true.
Yeah, I think I learned all I need to know about Seattle when Geno turned to his own sideline and said, "What the bleep are y'all doing?" So that's kind of where they are. But do you think there are any encouraging signs from the 49er offense in terms of turning around their misfortune in the red zone?
Yeah, no, I do. 100%. There was a quote from George Kittle last week, and basically he said, hey, listen, we understand how important Christian McCaffrey is, especially to the red zone. He's a big piece of the puzzle, but when you don't have that piece of the puzzle, you need to change some things up. And I interpreted that George Kittle was saying, hey, man, give me the ball. And George Kittle is one of the guys that they needed to lean on in the red zone, and they did that. So just to know that you have that, it's there, it can pay dividends for you. The Niners ran the ball much better, even if it didn't necessarily manifest itself in red zone touchdowns. I thought they ran the ball better. That was a part of the problem and a part of the process. More play action in the red zone, and more play action overall for the Niners was beneficial. So the beginning of it, this group they got coming up in Kansas City is a whole different animal. We know how good they are. We know how good they are specifically defensively, and they're still those dudes. But I think, I just kind of focus on the Niners and them doing the things that they're capable of and taking care of business. They did that in Seattle, and they're doing that with the red zone. And when McCaffrey does get back here in 3 weeks to a month, that's just my estimation. I'm not breaking any news here. But when he gets back not too long after the bye week coming up here in a couple of weeks, I think those red zone problems will be behind them. But they still got to block better. They still have to be smarter. They still have to be more creative. And those are the things we saw in Seattle a few days ago.
Hey, Rod, last week with Seattle, we knew their defense, could be exploited by the ground game. Is it different this week where it seems like Kansas City's bread and butter is stopping the run? How do you see that playing out?
Oh, man. To be honest with you, I don't know. Because I do know, actually. And I think the Niners actually went down this road with success against Seattle, and this is what they have to do. The Niners, they let the Cardinals dictate whether they should run the ball. When they started throwing 5 and 6 man fronts, I believe I talked about this. When they started throwing 5 and 6 man fronts at the Niners, especially early in the game, Arizona did, the Niners checked out and they started throwing the ball. And that's exactly what Arizona wanted. Well, then you go to the Seattle game. I can think of a couple of instances right now at the top of my head where Seattle had 8 in the box, 5 man front. Right? They were there to stop the run, but the Niners blocked it up. They got to the second level, and they had success. I can think of a run. I think it was for like 28 or 32 yards that the Niners had in the first half, where it was against a 5-man front and an 8-man box. So I say all that to say that's probably what they're going to have to do when they face this Kansas City Chiefs defense on Sunday, is that they're going to gear up to stop the run, because that's what they do. Their fifth, Kansas City, is in rushing defense, and the Niners are just going to have to keep sledgehammering away and then get themselves in not necessarily manageable passing down of distances, but get themselves in a situation where that play action that they ran more last week from a percentage standpoint, they were 29% play action usage rate against Seattle. That play action only works if you're running the ball. I don't think the Niners are going to run for 200 yards on Kansas City like they did against Seattle, but it's the usage and the threat of the run that will make that play action work. So I in my estimation, that's where the Niners have to go, so they can, again, get to that passing defense that is not as good as Kansas City's rush defense, but Kansas City overall, all 3 levels of that defense is still just really, really, really damn good. So the Niners are going to have to play close to perfect football like they did in Seattle, where they didn't give up sacks and they didn't turn the ball over.
What is the official Rod Brooks over-under on how many kickers the 49ers go through this year? Is it 7? Is it 8?
I mean, it ain't looking pretty good right now, but if we're going to set it at 7.5, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and go with the under. They brought Anders Carlson in. If you follow kickers, the one person out there that's listening that does, that's a name you're familiar with. They brought him in and put him on the practice squad. Wright is still dealing with having, a shoulder issue from having to make the tackle. But the bigger overarching point, this isn't the most serious thing in the world, but it's not really funny. Hey, man, the Niners can't keep getting their kickers hurt because it's a 2-part problem. They kick it in the end zone, which Moody didn't do. That's what got him hurt. And Wright didn't do in Seattle. That's what got him hurt. That's bad enough as it is. But the kick coverage is the problem. Yeah. The kicker is the last line of defense. He shouldn't be making a tackle. And the Niners' punt and kick coverage, and special teams overall, but specifically coverage, has been so bad, in my estimation, because they got a bunch of young dudes out there. They got a bunch of guys who are not necessarily primetime players. And I don't mean it as an insult, no disrespect, but I guess I was just very insulting and disrespectful. They got guys out there who are just, they're not good right now. If they had, I just think back to Jim Harbaugh when he was the coach of the Niners. He had defensive players playing special teams, playing coverage. Because his thing is, why am I going to take my best players off the field for a part of the game that is as important, especially when it's done well or not done well, when it's as important as offense and defense? Now, I'm not saying that should be done, and obviously Kyle Shanahan doesn't see it that way, but the guys that the Niners have playing defense and then the guys they have coming in playing coverage, you got guys off the practice squad. You got guys that are really, really young, rookies, first-year, second-year players, and that's been a massive part of the problem when it comes to punt and kick coverage, and that's why the Niners are, they got their kicker a little black book out, like Tommy from Martin had the little black book with GTD in it. And if you watch Martin, you know what GTD means. I don't have to say it.
Oh my
God! Niners got that kicker little black book out, and that's why they've been calling these guys. And I love the fact that y'all know what GTD means.
Come on now. You terrible, Rod. You terrible. Hey, man, you the only dude I know to drop Martin references, man. I appreciate that. That's right. This guy.
hey, I knew I was in your company. That's what I did.
Exactly. Hey, let me ask you this, man, because I hear Niner fans talking about, we got our extended rest, 10 days off. We'll be ready. Chiefs coming off some rest as well. How do you see, both teams being rested? I don't want to say healthy because we know that's not true, but how do you see both teams going into this game?
Niners needed that mini bye, and they needed it from a health standpoint. They also needed it just from a mental standpoint because the last couple of games were a grind because of the position they got themselves in. But Andy Reid coming off a bye week, and I just finished doing my notes a little while ago, so I got the numbers right here. Man is 21-4. Andy Reid is coming off a bye week in his career.
Yikes.
8-3 with Kansas City coming off the bye week.
Okay.
Andy Reid with time to prepare with that team, that's a problem. That's a big problem. But you know what? Hey, man, that's just the way it works. Kansas City coming off a bye when they see the Niners. The Cowboys are going to be coming off a bye when they see the Niners. But you know what, man? Whatever. Check ball. Let's go. Line it up. That's the NFL, man. You got to deal with it.
Rod, thanks for your time. Have a good show. We'll be watching on TV, and we'll catch up with you next week. We appreciate it.
It's always fun.
Yeah,
all right, now
it is fun. He's bringing
it. Yeah, man, that's our guy.
Bringing it.
No, that's a good get, man. He'll be joining us every week too throughout the Niners season. So that's good stuff.
When